All right, let's begin, guys. We'll have a quick short start here. We're gonna provide a bit of a recap of simulation theory from last year for those that are doing it in their assignment, and then we'll probably spend a little bit of time. I mainly want to catch up with the guys that are doing this to make sure they get a good start, and then if we've got some time, we might be able to watch some more Westworld. So when we talk about like a simulation, right? Okay. We're generally talking about it in a very specific way, but here's a couple of ways you could understand that world. So firstly, you could have your physical body in a physical environment. All right, so an example of a simulation like that might be Westworld. Okay, it's a simulated reality in that it's not real. Okay, you're surrounded by robots, but they physically exist. They have a physical manifestation. The same with the Truman Show. Okay, we've all seen that film probably for English back in year 8 and 9. All right, that's a physical reality despite it being a simulated, a false one. But then you have like a second layer to it where you exist in a physical body, but you plug yourself into a simulation. All right, so we can think of that as VR sets and plugging yourself in, going home playing Call of Duty tonight. All right, so you've got a physical body, but you're going into a digital environment. So Billy, let's put that away for a second. And so this is the matrix, isn't it? All right, where you have a physical body in the real world, you're in a pod, but you exist, your consciousness is in the digital. And then in Inception, okay, that's the great film where they're going in and out of dreams. All right, what is a dream but a sort of a digital reality that they can move around in. But they exist in a physical body. When we talk about simulation theory, this is the third one, and this is what we tend to talk about the most, okay, or what we mean by a simulation. And that is that you are a digital consciousness in a digital world, that you don't have a physical body, that your thoughts, feelings, and emotions are just ones and zeros, just pieces of code on a computer somewhere. All right, so that's what we're addressing here. We're addressing the digital body in a digital environment. All right. So Bohlström, who's the Swedish philosopher who wrote the article, he says there's three possibilities. Either we'll run simulations and choose not to. Okay, we can do it, but we think it's unethical, or and so forth. For whatever reason, we choose not to. Or we can run them, and we do, or we can't run them. Okay, so there's a couple of reasons why we might entertain that idea. It might be we go extinct, all right, destroy each other. All right, might be that we don't have the computer processing power to do it. But his argument is that we can run them based on computer processing power, and that we most certainly will. Like we already do. You know, every kid at home playing Call of Duty or The Sims or whatever computer game you play, you're simulating a digital world. And so the argument he gives is based off of Moore's law. All right, which says that computer processing power doubles every 18 months. Every 18 months it increases, it doubles, exponential growth. So you can see this is just taken from our PowerPoint last year, okay? The evolution in graphics, all right? Graphics, and it's something that I've been really privy to as well. I grew up playing computer games like GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. Has anyone ever played that? Yeah, so GoldenEye is like old James Bond game and it's clunky as. And you look at sort of the realism of games now, it's just uncanny how much they've transformed in that period of time. Okay, so that's on a two-dimensional space, right? And now we're going into this VR world where things are now three-dimensional. And so look at this is a computer in the 1950s, all right? And you know, that might be able to perform some simple mathematical calculations. And now look at this supercomputer that's connected to all of the world's knowledge in everyone's pocket. VR sets, you know, it's just getting realer and realer and realer. And so the argument says, well, based on what's happening, you know, what's it going to be like in 50 years? Okay, it's going to be full immersive. And then so they go, well, if we can make an environment look real, why not make it so that the people or the pieces of code that inhabit the simulation think that they're real? Okay, that's his argument. It's just saying, if we want to make it more and more real, and you see Ford talking about this in Westworld, you know, we want it to be more and more real, then we give them consciousness. Okay, And so this is the argument that I made last year. I think this is a good way to describe it, right? So if you can imagine, let's talk about in terms of the rabbit first, okay? Here we've got 10 boxes, one of them's yellow and 9 of them's blue. And I'm going to tell you the rabbit is behind one of the boxes, but you don't know which one it's behind. Okay, so we say, what's the probability of it being behind the yellow box? 1 out of 10. What's the probability of it being behind the blue box? 9 out of 10. What's more likely? It's far more likely, in fact it's 9 times more likely that it is behind the blue box. Okay, so up here we're saying, if we can run simulations and we can create a simulated consciousness, a digital consciousness, all right, then we're probably doing it on a mass scale. It's not like there's 1 or 2 of these worlds. It's like every teenager that goes home and plays Call of Duty, they've got their own simulated world, all right? And so all of a sudden, you're this rabbit, all right? And so the probability that you're living in the real world, the real physical world, compared to a digital world is very low, all right? So it's far more likely, based off this instance, if we can simulate consciousness on a computer, it's far more likely that you are a piece of digital code, all right? That's his argument here. Okay, so it's a fairly convincing argument, Caitlin, like probabilistically, but it does have an implicit assumption. Okay, so firstly, that conscious awareness can be programmed, and that computers, programs, code, that they can be sentient. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between those 2 words, sentient and sapient. Sentient means able to sense things. Okay, so even in that sense, trees are sentient creatures, right? It's sentient, they're a sentient vegetative state. Sapient means the ability to think and reason and deliberate. Okay, so that we would say that's something that really separates us. We're Homo sapiens. Sapient, the ability to think, reason, deliberate. That's something that really separates us from the animals. Anyway, if we can have computers, programs, code that are sapient, that think for themselves and have conscious awareness thoughts in this digital environment, that's what we're assuming when we're saying it's highly probable. Okay. Now, there's one guy who says that's a bad assumption. It's really bad to assume that we can artificially create consciousness. All right. So this is the Chinese room argument. It's by a philosopher called John Searle. Okay. So listen carefully to this argument. It's pretty simple. Can anyone here read Chinese? Can anyone here read Korean? Excellent. Okay. So I want you to imagine that you're in a room. Okay, there's a closed door, there's no windows, you're in this room by yourself, all right? And every day, there's a piece of paper that gets slid under the door, okay? These Chinese characters, all right? All these symbols, all this page of text, you have no idea what it means, okay? And then your job, you have this great big tome. A tome is a really big book. You have to flick through the tome until you find the page that corresponds with the page that they slid under the door. Okay, so you're going through, you're trying to find where does it match up. Okay, you find the right page, and on the left-hand side is all of the Chinese characters, and on the right-hand side is all of the Korean characters. And so your job, okay, you've got this page of Chinese characters, your job is to rewrite it in Korean characters. Okay, so you've got this Chinese coming in, you write it back in Korean, and then you put it out. Okay, the point of this is to say, you have information in, process, information out, without any awareness or consciousness of what it means. Okay? Now, John Searle's argument is that this is what all computers are like. Even the ones in Westworld that are going, don't shoot me, and oh, that hurts when you shoot me. It doesn't really hurt them. It's just information in, process, information out, that there is no real consciousness there, that they are just responding according to how they're programmed. So he says you can't make digital consciousness, and you can't even make a robot conscious. That's the Chinese room argument. What do you guys reckon about that? It's a pretty convincing argument, I reckon.